Hi everybody, this is Vicariously Yours. I'm going to whisper today, and I wanted to talk about how I overcame 6 to 10 years of driving anxiety. I've heard a lot of people talk about their driving anxiety over the years. People have privately confided in me their stories. I've looked at content, I've seen videos online, I've listened to podcasts. And out of all the people I've heard talk about driving anxiety, I think I had it like one of the worst of all of them. I could not drive a single mile on the highway for like the past almost 3 years. And for the past 6 to 10 years, I was always white-knuckled and diffusely anxious on the highways. It was very unpleasant. And I have had issues with like panic attacks and stuff like that for the past 6 to 10 years. So this was something that was like a deeply ingrained trauma because I've been through some traumatic things in cars and it just crept up over time. I used to not have any driving anxiety. I drove all over this country. I've lived in Boston twice. I've lived in Denver. I've lived in California 3 times. I'm from Kansas City. I've lived here like 10 different times. I've driven all over and never had any issues. But about 6 to 10 years ago, I started having issues and they just slowly crept up and I kept going through crazy stuff and including stuff in my car like my brake system going out when I was driving down the edge of a mountain and I almost drove off the mountain. I had to stop the car by like driving it into the shoulder and just letting the shoulder kind of like slowly brake it. That was crazy. I ran off the highway when I was driving in the desert one time and crashed in between 2 Joshua trees because the sand and the wind blew this huge gust out of nowhere and I lost control of the car. I was not intoxicated. And I managed to walk away with that out of that one without a scratch, and the car actually worked fine because I crashed right in the sand. I got T-boned when I was living in the San Fernando Valley, and I was driving through Panorama City on my way to Panorama City, on my way to work. And this guy T-boned me. He was driving out of a Carl's Jr. drive-thru, and he T-boned me. It's absolutely nuts. So I've been through and there's many, many other things I've been through in cars. I was homeless and I lived in my car for 6 months. So I've had some dark times in cars. So it took a long time for me to go from a person who drove all over the country to someone who didn't even want to drive to the grocery store, let alone the highways. And it took years for it to get that bad. And once it got that bad, it really messed up my social life, my professional life. My entire reality was basically like a 5-mile radius, like no more. I really rarely ever had it in me for the past 6 years to drive any more than like 5 miles. And I didn't even like driving 5 miles. It got so bad at certain points where I'd have to prepare for multiple days to just be able to go and drive 5 miles. I mean, serious driving anxiety. Serious. So serious that there's some people that I've told this to and they don't even think I'm being serious or they think I'm crazy or something. They give me this look like, what's he talking about? Like, there must be something wrong with him. Like, this can't be real. It's like, no, I'm otherwise a fairly normal person. My nervous system does not work with me when I'm driving a car. It sucks. So anyway, I had an opportunity to go to a friend's house. Let me back up. I got a newer car about 9 months ago. The car I was driving before that was very small. And I didn't realize that was contributing as much to my driving anxiety. I didn't think that would matter so much. But I ended up with a car this time around that's a bit bigger. And oh my God, does that slightly bigger size make a massive difference. And I also have tinted windows on this car. They're just a little bit darker. And that also blows my mind what a huge difference that makes for my driving anxiety. So when I got this newer car about 9 months ago, I was already doing a lot used to it, and I didn't want to jinx it. I thought, no way, am I actually kind of enjoying driving again? Let's see, I don't trust this yet. But I did fine with that car. I was doing better and better and better. And a friend invited me over to his house. And he lived about an hour away, and I was taking the back roads. I still wasn't ready to get on the highways, or so I thought. And the GPS ended up taking me on the highway. And I'm driving on the highway. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm on the freaking highway. Oh, my God. Aren't I supposed to be having a panic attack right now? But I wasn't. I was totally anxiety-free, and I was unafraid. And I was like, whoa. It's been a long time since I've driven on the highway with no issues. So I came back from this friend's house the next day, and I drove on the highways again, or on the highway again for about 10 minutes. Did totally fine. And I was like, holy moly, I think I can drive maybe a little bit on the highways again. So then I got this big opportunity to go out to California, and then I ended up coming back. It's a long story, but this is a couple months ago. And I went out to California. This opportunity came up, and my soul just knew, I've got to go for this, and I'm glad I did. It just did not work out the way I thought it would, and I ended up coming back here to Kansas City. But something about that passion and that drive that drove me out there made me face my fears, like cognitive behavioral therapy to the max. And I did some practice runs when I knew I was going to be moving back to California. I'm like, well, somehow I'm going to have to figure out how to drive, 2,000 to 3,000 miles to get back out there. Because in the winter times, I take the southwest route when I go out to California, so that I don't have to potentially run into like a blizzard in the mountains or something like that. So I was pretty intensely nervous. Kind of. I was also really excited and passionate about driving back out to California a couple months ago. So I did a practice drive at nighttime. I did a practice drive in the snow on the highway, all this on the highway. I drove to work. I did all the stuff I needed to do for like 2 weeks on the highway. I had no problems. And I'm like, wow, what happened to my driving anxiety? This is crazy. But it took like many years for me to develop the driving anxiety. And it took many years for me to get back out of it and heal from it. And I never thought that you could heal like this. I just thought I'd always have some level of driving anxiety. I never dreamed I would like literally be unafraid on the highways again. So the day came to go drive out to California from Kansas City, and I left, and I spent 5 days driving out there. I had no driving anxiety the whole time. It's like 2,100 miles that I drove initially. And it just blew my mind. I didn't want to jinx it. I didn't want to call it yet. Because I'm like, this is crazy. I just drove 2,000 miles. And I had no driving anxiety. When I used to have driving anxiety so bad, I couldn't even drive to the grocery store. Hardly. Seriously. So then things ended up not working out in California. Not in the way that I thought that they would. So I had some unfinished business still up in far northern California. And I drove up there. And I then drove all the way back down through Los Angeles and back to Kansas City. And I ended up driving a total of 6,000 miles. And I had no driving anxiety the whole time. So I learned that trauma and anxiety and panic issues that you have over a certain thing or a trigger, maybe not in every case, but in some cases, you can heal from that stuff to a level that you probably never thought was possible. I didn't think it was possible. I never thought I'd drive my car again and not feel that fear, like when a car cuts me off, or when something, dangerous happens on the road, or whatever. Or when I'm on the highway, or I'm driving super fast, or if I'm driving in rush hour, or if I'm driving through a downtown area. I never thought I'd be able to do that and feel zero fear. Like, not even the slightest trigger. But that's exactly what happened. So I guess cognitive behavioral therapy, or maybe that's exposure therapy. I don't know. I'm not a licensed medical provider or medical practitioner or whatever. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. So this is not professional advice. I just, I think it's either exposure therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the two, or maybe both. The idea is to slowly face your fear until you get over it. So that's what happened with me in my driving. So far, so good. I've driven almost 7,000 miles now with zero anxiety. So if there's something you're going through that's really intense and it has messed up your life, or it makes your life harder because you got traumatized or something along those lines, I will give you hope, and I will say that in some cases, even for stuff that you are suffering from for years, for a decade, in some cases you can 100% heal from that, and it's not an issue anymore. So it's really, really, really wonderful and rewarding to be at this spot in my life where I don't have driving anxiety. Like, sometimes I get a little hesitant still because I'm so used to being anxious of driving, but I still have not had one issue on the road. It's been a long road to get to this road. Yeah. So, anyway, love you all. I just want to share that, and I promise I will keep making my ASMR videos much better than all this. I'm just trying to show up and trying to be here and start being more consistent so I can get into the rhythm of everything. But also want to share just the miraculous healing from driving anxiety. I'm sure that somebody else out there has got driving anxiety who sees this. And I want you to know that even if you're trapped in your closet or your bathroom for like 3 years like I was, you can still get to a point where you eventually can comfortably drive your car on the highway again, cross country. Because I just did it. Blew my mind. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this one up. I've got a lot more stuff coming. But for now, I just need to be recording videos and posting them for me. And then I'll do it for everybody. I mean, I'm doing it for you guys too, but I'm doing this for me because I wanted to do this for so many years, but I didn't. And so here I am. Vicariously yours. Cheers.